Welcome back to Eddie's Launchpads.
We've been cleared for departure.
Okay, Eddie, start the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's go.
Stand by for action.
We've got a returning guest for you now. We've got another author, as we have all of this season, but he's been on the show before 4 years ago when we first started, and it is a pleasure, a privilege to have him back on the show. He's got a wonderful story he's going to share with us now. We welcome back onto the show Brian Abram. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Good morning to you, sir.
For those people who will remember you or may have seen you on your TV appearances, they may know you already, but for those who don't, could you share a little bit about your story, Brian?
As you know, Dave, it's a very long story, but boy, it's an interesting one, so strap in and I'll go right from the very beginning. So I was a 56-year-old gentleman, semi-retired because I had a big job in sort of finance, and then I moved on and set up a consultancy working for myself. And in my leisure time, I used to do quite a lot of cycling. Middle-aged man in Lycra, that's a thing, isn't it? People have got a lot of opinions about that, but I was one of those. And I used to love the cycling. And one sunny Sunday morning at 9:15, I got onto my bicycle to cycle home from a friend's house where we were staying the night before. And within 45 minutes of that happening, I was paralyzed and was never going to walk again following an accident. So that's how quickly life can change. So I'll elaborate on that a little bit because that's a bit of a dramatic start, isn't it? So I set off down the road, 33 miles home, cycling away. My wife took the car, and I was going to meet her later on in the afternoon. Unfortunately, I only got 1 mile down the road because my bicycle skidded on some gravel and I fell off. And a series of very unlucky events happened. Normally, when you fall off your bike, you scrape yourself or whatever, and there was a wall running alongside the road. But unfortunately for me, this wall was only about a couple of feet high at the point where I fell off. So I went over this wall, and with it being a modern bicycle, that was still attached to me. And then I got a little bit more unlucky because on the other side of the wall, there was a sheer drop. And I hit a tree backwards. So when I hit the tree backwards, that instantly broke my spine permanently in the middle thoracic area for the medics there. Lots of other little fractures and things, broke my shoulder blades, broke my collarbone, broke most of my ribs, and I was in a very bad way. Well, just to make matters worse, I then fell and landed in a river. And the river wasn't too deep, I should say, but I ended up face down. So I remember looking at the pebbles at the bottom of the river. And that was about that. I shouted for help as best I could because I was really, really ill. I think it must have been about half an hour. And eventually I gave up, and that was it. I thought, well, game over here. So I made peace with myself and was about to just sort of lie there and see what happened. But then I heard a lady shouting, "There's somebody in the river." Excuse me. And I don't really know what happened next, but I'm still here. So obviously something very good happened next. But I'm going to save that for the end because that's a very interesting bit. Anyway, ended up in hospital with a lot of injuries, in a coma for a few weeks. Very poorly with a pressure sore. I don't want to go into the detail of that, but not very nice, which kept me in bed for a long time. In 2 different hospitals, ended up in something called a spinal unit in Pinderfields Wakefield in Yorkshire, where they try and rehabilitate you. So because of the pressure sore, that didn't really go very well. And to cut a long story short, I came home from hospital after 50 weeks. And so, virtually a year. And when I came home, I wasn't very well either. So it took me many, many months at home to get a little bit better in a house that I'd never been to before, because there was no way I could get back in my old house, which was a two-story house in a steeply sided valley. So that was no good for a wheelchair user. And I came home to a nice bungalow that we'd managed to renovate, or my wife managed to renovate, whilst I was in hospital. So a lot of pressure on her. And yeah, I from then on was a full-time wheelchair user. I'm now 68, so a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. So I've been in a wheelchair now for whatever it is, coming up 12 years. I didn't say that. This was 2013. I should have said that. So 2013, almost 12 years, the 4th of August. And I've been a wheelchair user for all that time. I'm used to it now. It's no fun. Still have a lot of issues with it. But there we are. Now, you asked me about books, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
People are thinking, what's he on about here? I thought he was an author. Where's the connection? Well, beautiful thing happened 6 months before I had my accident. We had a lovely grandson called Charles who came along. And Charles has obviously only ever known me in a wheelchair because he was 6 months old when I had my accident. He's now 12, nearly a teenager. And he's just accepted me. I'm his granddad and I'm in a wheelchair. So much so that he gave me a name and he called me Grandad Wheels, because he's got two granddads, and if he calls me Grandad Wheels, we know which one he's talking about then. And so I kind of accepted the name, and it was a strange name, but I liked it. And although he's only ever known me in a wheelchair, and we've just got on with it, and he didn't see me as any different. It did worry me a little bit that when he got a bit older, what would he think? Would he ask me why I'm in a wheelchair? Why am I different to other granddads? I thought, well, what am I going to tell him? So obviously I could tell him the truth, but he might be very little when this happens. So I know I'll tell him that I got attacked by a lion in the jungle. Yeah, big fight ensued. I won, obviously, but the lion tried to rip my legs off, and I came out of it injured. And so I kind of elaborated that a little bit. My wife told me not to be so daft, but I turned it into a story. And the story is all about how he feels a bit sorry for me, thinking I'm bored. And so he takes me on an adventure, and he thinks it'd be fun to push me into a skateboard park and scare me half to death. And a proper story, a start, a beginning, and end, a real plot in it. About 1,500 words I wrote in the end. I thought, well, there you go. I wonder what I could do with this. So I thought it'd be nice if it had pictures. And I can't draw at all, and nobody I know can draw. So I set about looking for an illustrator. Slight problem. I had no money to pay anybody. It was just going to be done for the love of it. By this time I'm retired. I'm not working again once I'm in a wheelchair. So I've got all the time in the world. And a couple of people, one after the other, said, yeah, I'll do that. I'm good at drawing. I can do cartoons. And the characters were created, but they dropped out because it was a lot of work, no money, and they had jobs to do. So I was just about to give up. And somebody said, why don't you try writing to art societies? Sometimes they have enthusiastic members. So I did. I wrote to our local one, and I got a nice reply saying there's a lady here who'd like to have a go. She's never done cartoons, but she's a beautiful artist called Lynn Hickin. And I got in touch and said, look, there's no money. She said, it doesn't matter. I'm retired like you. Painting's my life. I'd like to have a go. And she created, we had one image of me and Charles standing next to me with our thumbs up, and we took a picture and we sent her that, and she came back with an image. It took about 10 iterations to get an image I was happy with and she was happy with, and everything else then was based on that. So she drew a load of lovely pictures, and we approached a printer friend, and he said, well, no good giving it me. You need to get the publisher to do it. I said, well, I haven't got a publisher. We sent it off to every publisher you can imagine and every literary agent, most of whom wrote back saying it's really, really nice, but it's not for them. Reading between the lines, and this is me being a little bit cynical now. I'm not a celebrity. Nobody had ever heard of me, so, not much interest really. Anyway, me and Lynn said, you know what, let's put a few quid in a pot and get some printed and see what happens. We can sell Auntie Joan, Uncle Fred. Maybe we could sell a couple of dozen if we're lucky. And what should we do if we do? Well, let's give the money to charity. So we decided to give any money we made, be it a few quid, to charities that support people like me who've got a spinal injury.
That's amazing.
Shall I carry on? How are we doing?
Yeah,
it's a long
it's
story,
amazing.
isn't it? But
amazing.
It's getting interesting. So what happened next? Well, I got a bit of luck. A firm of solicitors that I'd had some dealings with, they said, why don't we have a little launch party for you and we'll invite a few people, we'll get the local press, because we think this book could be really useful for people to understand that just because somebody's in a wheelchair, the granddad, it doesn't mean you can't have fun. And that actually was the whole point of the book, to show that you can be fun to be with and you can have a laugh. So they put a party on, and a friend of mine said, can I bring a teacher friend of mine along? A very influential chap I now know called Chris Dyson, who ran a big primary school in Leeds. And he came along and he said, I want 60 copies of that, please. And will you come to my school and talk about it? Oh, wow. So I did. And the kids liked it. I'd never done it before, but to be honest, in a previous life, I did do a lot of speaking and presenting. So that I wasn't daunted by that. And I got inquiries from other school teachers. And before I knew it, I was doing a few school visits around the north of England. And then I wrote another book. Then I wrote another book. Then I wrote another book. And I was lucky enough that the Paralympian Hannah Cockcroft, who's from these parts, 9 times gold medal winner, she was a client of Irwin Mitchell as well. And we met up, and I wrote a story and I gave it to her thinking she wouldn't like it, but she thought it was funny. It was about me beating her in a race with a dog pulling me along, which was quite funny. And she said, yeah, just do it. So I did that. And if I now bring you right up to date, as at now, I've done just over 200 school visits, and I've got 6 books that are out there. I think the last time we spoke, Dave, there were 3, and I was just about to launch a Christmas book.
You were, yes.
So, yeah. So we're now up to 6. There's one in a zoo. There's one on the racetrack with Hannah. There's a Christmas book. There's one in a supermarket, which is the one I always tell in schools because they love it, where Charles, or Charlie as he's called in the books, he thinks that when I tell him my arms are aching, he thinks he can help me by tying a big fire extinguisher to the back of my wheelchair and sends it flying around the shop, causing chaos. And there's also one with a runaway electric wheelchair that causes mayhem as well. So every one of the books is silly, bit cheeky, but the message is, here's a granddad in a wheelchair and he's just having fun with his grandson. And that's all what it's all about, and kids love it.
Listeners, what an amazing story. You put on Eddie's launch pads and you've been on this incredible journey with this wonderful man and his incredible books. So many questions I want to ask, Brian, so stay tuned. Now, I'll tell you one thing. The first thing, I've got lots of things went through my mind as you was going through your story, Brian. The first thing is, we put things in our diary and say, oh yeah, that's November 23rd. Yeah, I can make that. Or there's, whatever. And we put it in our diaries and we think, yeah, I'll be there. But look at you. You went from working, cycling, and then literally within those 40 minutes, your whole life changed. And that went over my mind that, we put things in our diary, but will we be okay? Life is a very precious thing, isn't it?
Yes. In fact, actually, I've probably exaggerated. I think it was probably about 15 minutes there between getting on the bike and hitting the tree. But none of us anticipate these things, do they? But there are plenty of quotes and sayings that are wise around this thing. But the most obvious thing is it's it's not what happens to us, it's how we deal with it, isn't it, that
Yeah,
matters.
absolutely.
I
The,
didn't plan for any of this, and I didn't like it
no.
happening. It's not nice, but it's how you deal with it that matters.
And what an incredible difference you've made to children's lives and to the charities that you support because of it. Not to say that I'm glad it happened, because I don't, mate. But it's out of something that was incredibly serious and incredibly bad for you comes this wonderful work that you're doing now.
But it's fortuitous because I wasn't an author. I wasn't a storyteller as such.
No,
Got a good imagination and creative.
yeah,
But the idea of writing a children's book, that's mad. It only came from me wanting to amuse the grandson. That was the motivation behind it. But one thing leads to another. And actually, this is a good point to say. I said right at the start that if we made a few quid, we'd give it to charity. Well, bizarrely, as at today, we've made £90,000,
incredible.
90,000, and I'm aiming for
Amazing.
100,000 by Christmas with a bit of luck.
That is amazing. Folks, go on to, after the podcast is over, double click and you'll see the wonderful illustrations that Brian's been talking about. Beautiful illustrations by Lynn. Go and have a look, and you're just one click away from this incredible website, so you can get hold of the books and support these charities and support Brian in his fantastic work. Now, Brian, the other thing that I like about what you do, and that you spoke about the last time you were on the show, this resonates with me more now because I'm an occasional wheelchair user. I have to use the wheelchair if I go out. For someone who, like yourself, is in a wheelchair all the time, I think that going into schools as you do, you create a very positive image about someone in a wheelchair, and you use that fact for children to do competitions and come up with their own wheelchairs, don't you?
I do. Obviously, I answer any questions that the kids have, and they always ask loads of questions from a position of genuine interest, no loaded questions. They just want to know. There's one question I've been asked in every single school that I've ever been in, without fail, and that is, how do you go to the toilet? Get that everywhere. So I tell them, and I don't make it graphic particularly, but I'll answer any question, and they can touch the wheelchair and we can chat about it, and it just normalizes it. Occasionally there's a disabled child in the school, and the first thing I'll do is challenge them to a race. I've not won one yet. I was humiliated by a 4-year-old. That was really terrible. He absolutely battered me, but still. What else? Yeah, I've been into special schools as well, where there are lots of children with learning difficulties or physical disabilities. But yeah, one of the things that I do is I point out just how boring my wheelchair is. It's got 2 big wheels at the back, 2 little ones at the front. You sit in it, it's boring. So I give them a template that they can draw a wheelchair around GRANDAD wheels and encourage them to use their imagination. Well, again, if you look at my website, you'll see 1 or 2 examples. And they're crazy. They have jet rockets on, springs, umbrellas, guns, you name it. They come up with all sorts of crazy wheelchairs. There's one with donuts for wheels with a big fridge on it, and crazy. I've seen over 30,000 of these things now. I've seen about 40,000 kids on my travels, and I never cease to get a giggle out of the things that they come up with. Some kids send me nice letters afterwards. They send me pictures, and you just want them to see me in a wheelchair as being no different to anybody else. That's what it's all about, just demystifying it.
Absolutely, and it's a very important message you take in as well as your books, and that's great to hear. You mentioned donut. There is a link to this. You're producing these books, and I'm guessing there'll be another one in the series. I don't know, but I'm guessing there will be. With somebody like The Simpsons, they've been going for decades, and nobody ever ages because it's a cartoon, and the writers keep coming up with the same thing. But I'm not saying that Charlie is particularly your grandson in the story, but Charles is growing now, and he's becoming a teenager. Do you find it more difficult to write the story now? Charlie is no longer Charlie as a young boy.
Well, there's several points about that. One, I've got no intention of writing any more books.
Ah,
I've written six. I'm happy with the six. I don't want to do any more, to be honest, because you've got to bear in mind I'm a self-published author. The last thing I can afford to do is have
yeah,
big piles of books in the garage, you know.
yeah.
And I'm happy with those six. And he's always going to be 6 years old in the stories. And that's how I'm just going to keep it. It's a bit like Dennis the Menace. I mean, he must be about 123 now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But he's always just going to be Dennis the Menace, isn't he?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I've done the six. My challenge now is to just get them in front of as many people as I can. School visits, school budgets are getting tougher. It's harder to get jobs. I do virtual school visits, which are fun because with a disability, I can't be driving too far.
No.
And bear in mind, I'm 68 now, and the older I get, the harder it is. So I cover a physical area in a big kind of oval over the north of England, but I can get to any school in the world virtually. And I've had great feedback from those. I know a teacher well on the Isle of Man, and I've done a few virtual visits there because I can't easily get there. And his kids love it. And so I can get the message across virtually as well as face to face. So I need to focus on getting the books out there rather than producing more books now.
Absolutely fantastic. I just hope it goes from strength to strength. Wherever you are in the world, you can get hold of Brian. And if you've got a school, even if you've got a school out in maybe in the Emirates or somewhere that is an English school, and you want to get hold of Brian, just get in touch with him. I'm sure he'll be delighted to do a virtual meeting with you, and you can get hold of these fantastic books.
Yeah, I've done one, Dave. I did one for an organisation, I forget what it was called now, but it was for school kids all over the world that didn't go to normal schools.
Right.
And they were all online at the same time. So I was talking to kids in Australia, kids in Singapore, even children in Ukraine who, for the war, couldn't get to school. So I can do any of those things. That's always good fun.
Brilliant. So if people want to get hold of your books, Brian, and get hold of you for virtual or school visits, where's the best place for them to go?
Very simple. My books are only available through my website. I don't sell them on Amazon. I probably will in the future, but I'd rather do it through my own website at the moment. Part of my reasoning for that is, and the reason I can give so much money to charity, is that if anybody buys a book, every single penny goes to the charities. My sponsors cover my printing costs, so I can afford to pass on the whole thing. So it's grandadwheels.com. Simple as that.
GRANDADWHEELS.com. And if you want to go on, listeners, and have a look at the illustrations, obviously you can go to Brian's website, but we'll also include a few pictures on our publicity as well for it. And on the front cover, we'll make sure that there's sort of ideas that you can use for in your school to get these books into your school. Now, I know, as Brian said, budgets are tight, and it is very, very difficult for schools. And for all you schools out there who are struggling, we know what it's like. Every school is the same. But we've got to keep our resources fresh, and we've got to keep going. We've got to keep plugging away there, because every child matters. Every child's education matters. And here is a book that produces for children a very positive image about wheelchairs, about disability. You've got this fantastic man who's providing these resources that not only support your school, but they'll support children who need that extra support through the charities he supports. Brian, I'm so grateful for your time today. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh, I've got to tell you the story to finish it all.
Go.
But just before I do, people have said to me that the PHSE curriculum, everything I do in schools really supports that, because we talk about inclusion and, celebrating differences, etc. But I've got to finish with this because I tell this in every school and it usually gets goosebumps. So where do I start with this? Right. The last thing I heard before I went to sleep was a lady shouting, "There's someone in the river." That lady got in touch with me some years later. How she found me, I'm not going to tell you because it's a very long story. But if you go on my website, you'll be able to read the story of how we reconnected. And we ended up on The One Show, which is a BBC One programme that goes out every night at 7 o'clock, as you know, and they told our story. And they introduced me to her, and it was all very emotional, as you can imagine. But something else happened, and this is ludicrous. I live in Halifax in the north of England. My accident happened in a little village in Derbyshire, so nowhere near where I live. And I did a school visit in Warrington near Liverpool, which of course is nowhere near either of these places. And this was in 2022, Dave. This is after we last spoke. And I told the kids what happened to me because they always ask, and I tell them the story of the accident and how I ended up in a river. And I don't know what happened to me. Well, I now do, because it turns out when the lady shouted, "There's someone in the river," there was a man camping on the other side of the river, and he heard her. And he got to me and he kept my head out of the water so that I didn't drown, because I was drowning, because I'd given up by that point. So that's good. And there was a little girl called Emily in year 2 in this school. And when she got home, her dad naturally said to her, "What do you do at school today?" Now, any teachers out there will know that somebody from year 2 remembering what they did at school is a miracle, really. But she did. And she said, well, this man came in the school and he told us about this terrible accident that he had. And he was in the river, but there was a man there, and this man got to him and kept his head out of the water. And it turned out that was Emily's dad.
Oh, wow.
I know. Absolutely ludicrous coincidence. Crazy.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Forgive me, I get emotional.
No. Do you know, Brian?
We ended up on BBC Breakfast TV being interviewed as well.
I don't know.
So that's a lovely full circle thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why they don't turn that into a TV drama. No,
Well,
really.
it was
I mean, what
certainly
an amazing story that of your inner strength to keep going, the people around you. What a fantastic story, listeners.
The coincidence of managing. I could have been 200 yards down the road in a different school. I could have been anywhere.
Yeah.
And so we ended up on the TV that very morning. I was on the TV. Breakfast TV, we sold £8,500 worth of books, which was astonishing. So,
brilliant.
Yeah, and I now know the 2 people who saved my life.
That's incredible.
Because we get together and celebrate it.
What an amazing story, Brian. I said at the start it was a privilege to meet you, and it's still a privilege to know you. Long may your incredible work continue, folks. Get onto the web. Now the podcast is coming to an end. Get onto Brian's website straight away. Get on, have a look at it, look at the books, think about Brian's incredible story, read all about the stories that Brian's put on there, and let's get these books into the hands of the children. We've got Christmas coming up.
Dave, if you want to see those 2 episodes of the TV broadcast, they're both there are links on my website that will take you straight to the 2 TV programs.
Brilliant. Well, there you go, folks. There's lots there. With Christmas coming up, why not buy a Christmas presents for your children? Because we need to teach our children important messages about disabled people. Because, people who have to go through all sorts of disabilities, not just people in wheelchairs, sometimes they face prejudice. Not all the time, but sometimes they do. And that's why we need to teach our children to show respect to people like Brian, because he's doing fantastic work.
Well, that's all for this week, folks. So until Eddie and Captain Dave take another flight of learning on the launchpad, every day, in every way, be ready, be safe, be respectful, and never forget to dream, believe, and shine. Eddie's Launchpads is an EdStar production for Dogsthorpe Infant School.